Hey everyone, welcome to the Christ Pearls channel. This is Jessica, and today I want to do just a really short video, and I'm going to try to start doing more of these really short videos. I like doing deep dives, I like getting deep into topics, but I realize that not everyone's able to consume, like an hour-long video. So what I want to do is try to break up some of these thoughts. I have a study group that I've had ongoing for like the last 5 years, and we cover lots of different topics, just favorite gospel topics, but a lot of them are related to symbolism and signs of the times. And some of those things that I've shared with my study group, I have just annotated all throughout my scriptures. And I've been talking about wanting to dig into the book of Revelation a little bit because it's one that I've studied quite a bit and I really love. And I've come to love it for different reasons. Not just because it's this apocalypse that talks about the last days, but because I see in it a temple liturgy. I see the temple drama. And so I wanted to share a little bit of that with you. One thing that I've learned about the book of Revelation is that there are many layers, and I want to share a little bit of the layers that I've seen, particularly with regard to this being viewed through the lens of the temple drama. And I see that maybe best illustrated and easiest to identify in this idea of the 7 seals and the 4 horsemen. So the 4 horsemen, they represent causes of the great tribulation, of mortality. This is our probationary state where we all experience universal trials, and these trials purify and sanctify us. This is how we become the Lord's people, this righteous remnant that's gathered out of the world. The 4 horsemen correlate to the first 4 seals in the book of Revelation, and if you look at the seals, you can see that it takes all 7 of them to be broken before the scroll is opened, and each seal represents a period of the story of this temporal existence of the earth, or this second probationary state that we're in, this like second estate. So notice how there's the white horse, the red horse, the black horse, and the pale horse. If you're looking at this through the lens of the temple and trying to understand the temple drama in this, then you can see that there's this pattern in history. The white horse represents conquest, tyranny. It leads to the red. This is unrighteous dominion, like on all levels, particularly at the highest level. And that's the empirical powers that the prophet Daniel saw, the tyrants that Isaiah characterized as the king of Assyria, the king of Babylon. And this white horse can represent those things. It can also represent the Savior. So whatever you're looking at these symbols, try to think of the dual nature of these things. Think about the aspect that could represent the work of the Lord, and then the aspect that represents Satan's work, which is always in opposition to the work of the Lord. Now, if we're talking about our temporal existence, this time in mortality, the great tribulation of mortality, then white representing conquest also represents tyranny. And this leads to the red horse. And this is the order that they appear in the book of Revelation. So red represents war, contention, warmongering, civil unrest, and this leads to the black horse. And black represents famine, economic oppression, greed, oppressing the poor, price manipulation, things that cause famines for the poor. These lead to this pale horse. And this pale horse is green and yellowish, and it's like a corpse color that represents disease and death, and that's what it leads to. There's a really good book that I read by Richard Draper and Michael Rhodes. Richard Draper has a book called Opening the Seven Seals, and then he did another book with Michael Rhodes where they did a translation from the Greek for the book of Revelation. And it was a really helpful book. It's basically verse by verse commentary, utilizing the aid of their translation for clarification. Well, in this book, they talk about these 7 epochs of 1,000 years each, which comprise the totality of Earth's temporal existence, or the total record, like the complete story. And I really liked the book. I thought it was helpful. Bruce R. McConkie was quoted, "The Lord's Day is an age or an eon." They talked about how there's 7 days of service in the temple that constitute a full eternal round or a cycle of temple service. They talked about the pattern of totality. So 7,000 years is the totality of Act 2, or the second estate of mortality. They also talked about Abraham chapter 4. Evening and morning are first time or periods, and 7,000 years would kind of represent like one eternal round of the seasons. So we've got the concept of the 4 seasons, the 4 times, and then also the 7,000 years, like the totality. With regard to the 7 seals and the connection to the 4 horsemen, these are the first 4 seals that are opened that we see in the book. And these are the 4 great tribulations that we experience in mortality leading up to death. The horsemen are the autumn symbols in the cosmos, which is a darkening season. When the 5th seal is opened, it shows what happens after death. A scene of the dead calling for the atonement of Christ, followed by a work being done for the dead in the spirit world, or the gathering of Israel on the other side of the veil. This is where the bridegroom pays the debts of the bride. When the 6th seal opens, we see the judgments that will fall upon the wicked because of the low point of the down road being reached. We see sackcloth as a symbol of mourning because it's the darkest part of the night, or the darkest time of the seasons, which is winter. So we see the lowest point of human history. There's a pattern to the Lord's judgment with 7 signs of judgment. We have earthquake, smoke, wind blows down stars, mountains move out of their place, and face of the earth is changed. The heavens depart or disappear like a scroll rolled up. So there's no revelation, and that's the concept there. And the 7th sign is kingdoms of the earth and all types of wealthy men and nobility hide and cannot stand. Here, 7 signifies complete judgment that falls on 7 wicked groups who abuse people for gain. A day of darkness and gloominess. Eden before them, and behind them, desolation. Armies cause the quaking, the earth quakes before them. This is a period marked by the worst warfare in human history, as tyrants harness technology to oppress nations and cause nation to rise against nation. These are also outward symbols of spiritual warfare, which has also reached its lowest and darkest point. Constant warfare that mutilates our spirits, simultaneous with the rise of evil that leads to the worst warfare. We also see the restoration. So, do you see in the book of Revelation how there's going to be 2 things? There's always equal and opposite. And I don't know if anyone recalls recently, I believe it was Elder Anderson talked about how as times get darker, there's going to be an equal and opposite power of God in the earth that compensates for that darkness. And we see that at the lowest point, like when humanity reaches its lowest point, the restoration begins. Now, if you are still looking through the lens of the temple, you can think about the covenants we make in the temple. There's like 5 covenants in the Old Testament that you can think about too. There's the covenant of Enoch and Noah, which is about obedience. There's the covenant of Abraham, which is about sacrifice. There's the covenant with Moses, which is all about the gospel of Jesus Christ. There's the Davidic covenant, which has to do with chastity. And there's this new and everlasting covenant that has to do with consecration. And so you may see some parallels happening there, like if you start looking for these themes as you're reading that book. And I always think about temple and ascension concepts when I'm reading the book of Revelation, now that I've studied quite a bit on it, and I can see that because I've seen different scholars point out different things that have opened my eyes to this theme. And so when you're viewing the book of Revelation as a temple text, you're basically reading the temple drama. And these 4 horsemen, they can represent all of those trials that we're experiencing and how they build on one another and lead to just everything we endure in mortality, just all people, all humanity, the whole world. Now, going back to those dispensations, you may notice that there's a correlation between the 7 general dispensation heads and the phrase, he that overcometh, in the book of Revelation. So, for example, Adam, he's our first dispensation head in the general heads. There are many dispensations, but if you go look at like the dispensation chart in the Gospel Library app, these are the main ones. So he drove out the man. He placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubim and a flaming sword, which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. This is Genesis 3:24. And then notice in Revelation 2:7, it says, to him that overcometh will I give to eat of the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of God. And then for Enoch, he's the second dispensation. Look at Moses 7:69. And Enoch and all his people walked with God, and he dwelt in the midst of Zion. And it came to pass that Zion was not, for God received it up into his own bosom. And from thence went forth the saying, Zion is fled. And then let's look at Revelation 3:12. It says, him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out. And I will write upon him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, which is New Jerusalem, which cometh down out of heaven from my God, and I will write upon him my new name. So are you seeing how there's some allusions in the book of Revelation to these great dispensation heads, these great patriarchs of old, and their time, their periods? And then Noah, he was our third dispensation. So let's look at Genesis 9:23. It says, and Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it upon both their shoulders and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father, and their faces were backward, and they saw not their father's nakedness. And then Revelation 3:5, it alludes to this verse. It says, he that overcometh, the same shall be clothed in white raiment, and I will not blot out his name out of the book of life, but I will confess his name before my Father and before his angels. Now let's look at Abraham. He's the fourth dispensation. If we look at Abraham 2:9, it says, and I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee above measure, and make thy name great among all nations, and thou shalt be a blessing unto thy seed after thee, that in their hands they shall bear this ministry and priesthood unto all nations. And if we look at Revelation 2:26, it alludes to this. It says, and he that overcometh and keepeth my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations. Now let's look at Moses. He's our fifth dispensation. And we're going to look at Exodus 16:15. It says, and when the children of Israel saw it, they said one to another, it is manna, for they wist not what it is, or what it was. And Moses said unto them, this is the bread which the Lord hath given you to eat. To him that overcometh, now we're in Revelation 2:17, to him that overcometh will I give to eat of the hidden manna, and will give him a white stone, and in the stone a new name written, which no man knoweth, saving he that receiveth it. Now let's look at Peter. He's our sixth dispensation head. And we're going to look at Luke 22:30. It says, that ye may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom, and sit on thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Revelation 3:21 alludes to this. It says, to him that overcometh will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I also overcame and am set down with my Father in his throne. So do you see how this phrase, to him that overcometh, is tied to each of these dispensation heads? Do you see a theme here? So let's look at Joseph Smith. He's our last dispensation. That's the dispensation that we're in now, the dispensation of the fullness of times. So for this, we're going to look at Doctrine and Covenants, section 135:1. And it says, to seal the testimony of this book and the Book of Mormon, we announce the martyrdom of Joseph Smith the prophet. And Revelation 2:11 says, he that overcometh shall not be hurt of the second death. So, do you see a theme here? And do you see how there's a story being told here? And this is the story of the world that we live in, and each dispensation. And if you look for that theme in the book of Revelation, I think it will start coming forward. And if you think about it as a temple drama, imagine that you're sitting in the temple as you're reading the book of Revelation, and you're receiving the story of the plan of salvation, and it is the story of how we overcome this great mortal trial, the trial of mortality, how we overcome the second estate. So this is a pattern of ascension in the temple too. Like, this is how we progress. So I'm just going to give you an idea. So let's look at these 7 promises that we just covered. To him that overcometh. Revelation 2-3 submits the 7-fold phrase, to him that overcometh, which is directed to individuals, females and males, who overcome the world and its wickedness. Each phrase found in the letters to the 7 churches is followed by one or more promise, which pertains directly to the temple. For example, eat of the tree of life. Through the atonement of Jesus Christ, all who overcome death receive the promise and blessing to eat of the tree of life. So this is overcoming that second death. And then going back to Revelation 2:17, will I give to eat of the hidden manna. The hidden manna refers to Jesus. And give him a white stone. Written upon this white stone will be a new name, which is the key word. New name. The new name, similar to the white robe, conveys the idea of a new existence or new life. Will I give power over many kingdoms? Many kingdoms refers to eternal, not temporal kingdoms. The saints are invited to come up unto the crown prepared for you and be made rulers over many kingdoms. The same shall be clothed in white raiment. These are they who are transformed into new persons by Jesus' atoning sacrifice. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. The white clothing with the new name signifies a new state of existence. Will I make a pillar in the temple of my God? Exalted men and women are compared to the pillars of a temple, which are stable, strong, and permanent fixtures of the temple precinct. These saints will stand forever in the heavenly temple, never to be removed by evil forces. I will write upon him the name of my God. The righteous will take the name of the Lord. And this is kind of one of those marriage motifs. We're the bride and Jesus is the bridegroom, and we take on his name when we marry him. I will write upon him my new name. Christ will give the righteous his own new name. So there are several scholars that I've referenced here. Some of this is coming from 175 Temple Symbols and Their Meanings by Donald W. Perry. Some of this comes from Understanding the Signs of the Times by Donald W. Perry and J.A. Perry. Much of this comes from Richard Draper and Michael Rhodes' book, or Richard Draper's book, Opening the Seven Seals. I can't remember the name of Michael Rhodes and Richard Draper's book. I'll have to look it up again, but this is where I've taken a lot of these notes. Some of this comes from Breck England. He's done a lot of work on the book of Revelation, and he actually put some of it into a podcast that you can find on Spotify. It's really good. And he talks a lot about viewing the book of Revelation as a temple liturgy. So I don't know if that was a fun topic, but I have really enjoyed that. It's opened my eyes up quite a bit to the connections between the book of Revelation and all of these dispensations. I see the horses, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, a lot differently than I think the rest of mainstream Christianity does. And it's because of the restoration. It's because we have all of this great revelation that Joseph Smith has given us in this last dispensation. And I'm so grateful for the gospel. I'm really grateful for the prophet Joseph Smith. And I'm really thankful that we have so much in the way of living prophets and apostles, the keys on the earth. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing the things that we can learn as we dig deep. Here's the book. The Revelation of John the Apostle by Richard D. Draper, Michael D. Rhodes. It's this book. This is the one that has the translation that they did together, and it was really, really helpful. It just clarifies some of the things that maybe are a little confusing in the KJV. And anyway, I just wanted to share those little thoughts. I would really like to do a deep dive series on the book of Revelation. Let me know if you liked this topic, if you want to know more about the book of Revelation. I have collected so much commentary on this book, particularly probably more than all the others. I'm really starting to get into Isaiah now, but for a long time I really studied the book of Revelation, and I've collected quite a bit on this. So if this interests you, let me know in the comments and like the video if you liked it. That's all for now.